Hey, good afternoon, everyone here in the room and online. Thank you for joining Good Systems to talk about elevating your public profile in the media and ensuring that embedding ethics in AI is part of the global conversation around AI. I am excited to introduce you today to Matt Penny. Matt is the Senior Media Relations Manager in University Marketing and Communications. He has been at UT for nearly 9 years and oversees all of the proactive media efforts of the university, which include UT News, the main social media accounts of the university's op-ed wire, Texas Perspectives. Prior to UT, he worked in communications for Baylor University, Boise State University, and for the city of San Antonio as the city's main public information officer. He got his start in the news world, working as a reporter and anchor for TV stations in Washington, Montana, Kansas, and Texas. So he has a lot of great insights for you today. And now I will turn it over to Matt as soon as we get our slideshow going.
Thank you, Stacey. I appreciate that. And hello to everyone online. I'm going to put my head in here. I am Italian, so I like to talk and walk. So you probably won't be seeing much of me, but you'll be hearing my voice and we'll get. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate that. And thank you for your willingness to learn more about the media and op-ed and why you want to talk about or talk to the media. Just real quick for my own curiosity, I just want to go around the room. What colleges and schools you all represent? School of Information, just raise your hand. Yep, right there. Okay. COLA. All right, COLA, good. Engineering. Perfect. CNS. Oh, we got that one. Matt, what do you?
IC squared.
IC squared. Yeah. Okay. Any other ones that I didn't mention? Communicate. Moody. Right on. Great. LBJ and all. Okay. If you're in the chat, drop it in. Good. So we got a good. Wonderful. Very good. Very good. So we've got a lot of good. We got a good array of people here. That's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you, probably pretty quickly. So I'll try to go slow. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. I like to make this as informal as possible and just more of just a conversation. It's just a lot of text slides. So I'm going to be talking a lot. So, but anyway, and feel free to reach out to me afterwards. And then each, college and school has its own communications rep as well. And I'll be talking more about that on contacting them and talking with them. But just a real quick agenda on what we're going to talk about. Why do you want to even talk to the media, especially in this day and age, right? Some interview tips if you do decide to speak to the media or write an op-ed, ways to get your work out there. If you got something super cool, maybe some research results. And then my favorite, we'll talk about op-eds. I love absolutely opinion editorials. We'll talk about that and some examples and why you want to write them. And then I'll briefly touch on social media. So we have a social media manager here at the university if you want more information on how to build your social media profile, but we'll hit on why you want to do it and just some tips on what to do. But first and foremost, why do you want to talk to the media? And really it boils down to three things. And the first being accuracy. There is a ton of misinformation out there and reporters need someone that they can trust to go to, and universities provide that. So you are an expert in your field. So why do you want to talk? Because you can shore up the misinformation. And then for op-eds, why do you want to write? It's the same thing. You can see the example on the side over there. There was a time when the border crossings were happening that nonprofits were getting blamed for the family separations at the border. And our research was like, that's not true. So we wrote an op-ed and well, that one was taken from the Statesman, but we were able to place it around several newspapers around Texas saying, you know what, that's not true. So it showed, that, this is the accurate way and the misinformation is wrong. Another reason, thought leadership. This is what it boils down to. You guys are thought leaders in your field and you guys should be out there speaking your mind about your opinions and saying sharing your knowledge. And, it promotes and enhances, not only you, but also the institution. It helps attract top faculty. It helps attract students. It helps attract donors and funders. You guys are at the cutting edge of your research and your knowledge, so you should be out there providing that thought leadership. And then finally, there's a public service element to it. We want to be known as a university that shares its knowledge. And to be honest with you, higher education is under attack in a lot of different ways. And, we need to make a case that, this is the kind of giving back to society, if you will, is that, we're showing the value of our faculty research and expertise. And, we can help mobilize support for universities. And to that point, I loved what the president of the National Academy of Sciences said. She was speaking to a group of geeky scientists. And she was trying to tell them to get out of their lab and to talk publicly. And she said a quote to them that I just love. And it's like, if you want to see greater funding for science, then you have to show up when the public asks. So one of the most basic things is that you need to be out there talking to them, be public and share your knowledge. So how would you share the knowledge? Well, there's a couple of ways for this particular group that can be out there. And I mean, the first and the foremost is right dead center, the Texas Monthly article that just came out, a week or two ago about the robots, right? That's such a super cool thing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on how, the relevance and to, link your research to everyday happenings. So while the Texas Monthly was right about, good systems, it even mentioned good systems in the article. These others they don't quote UT or researchers, but it's being written about. It's out there. There are stories that are in the media already, so it's topical. So what I'm saying is that we don't have to, start the ball rolling. The ball is already rolling. We just want you to be a part of it. Some writers to watch. It's a good idea, and I'll briefly touch on this later on in the social media slides on who you want to follow, maybe on social media. But these are some good writers to watch and to read who are writing about AI stuff. If you want to be part of the conversation, it's good to read them, good to read the national publications. It's good to know what they're writing about, kind of what they're looking for. And then, if you want to interact with them, follow them on social media, contact your media rep, have them send a pitch maybe to them that you want to be a source for any future stories that they might want to write. But, at the basic ground level, if you want to get into reporter stories, these are some good people to begin to write.
A quick comment. So Chelsea is a doc student, first-year doc student at the iSchool. So we got an inside.
You got it right
Inside
there.
track. Also, it's an uncommon situation. She's kind of an internationally known person in smart cities and things like that. She's got a lot of media experience.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. Got the end. See, and that's what it is. And what you hit on is relationships, and that's what you want to build is a relationship with the reporter. It is an emotional connection that they can rely on you to give, quick, good, commentary, if you will, for whether the source that they're working on or just insight. And that they can count on you to get back to them. That's great. That's great.
You can go even further. Chelsea is actually taking my course in the spring. So we should invite reporters to take our courses.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, just bring them all on as doc students. Be great.
Yeah.
New strategy.
All right, so let's say that you have a new research paper that was just published, or you've got something really cool to promote. What do you do? A lot of times people don't know. Well, the first and foremost is contact your unit's communication rep. Each school and college communication or college has its own communications unit, if you will. So reach out to them and tell them about it. I know they would love it. Before don't wait till the last minute. They would love to hear about it when you first know about it. So if you get funding for some cool research, let them know about it. Just be in constant communication with them. If you want to be a source for something, hey, I would really like to talk. Just telling them that would be good to know. they would really appreciate your interaction with them. And they'll tell you that there's different things that they can do. The first is news release, right? That's a formal news release. I can tell you that that it's not going to be for everything. We issue news releases on peer-reviewed research. That's a lot of it, or major happenings. We don't issue news releases on incremental research or grants, like if you got a big $1 million grant, we wouldn't issue a news release. That would be more of a media pitch, right? So that's where it's not a formal news release. There might be a write-up on UT News that you got this grant, but that would be more of the communications rep going to different publications and saying, hey, one-on-one with the reporter, hey, we got a researcher who got $1 million grant to study the whoop-de-doop of this. That's going to be humongously, hugely impactful, and you should really cover it. So there's different areas that we, between the media pitch and a news release, we can cover pretty much everything with what you want to do, but there is different ways that we approach it. There's also expert placements. So, you are an expert, obviously. So if there's something that is topical in the news that you might not have something in there that, is happening right now, but you're an expert on that, our media reps, or we can, pitch you as an expert. We get probably about 24 asks a week from reporters saying, I need an expert on this. Obviously, this week it's affirmative action, Supreme Court case stuff about how that's going to affect, admissions if affirmative action does go away. So that's what we're, feeling right now. So, the reporters always follow the news cycle, but if something in AI or something that touches on your research, is trending, please let your communications rep know, let us know. So if we get any type of reactive stuff, we can forward it to you. To that point, it's op-eds, right? So the op-ed editors follow the news, right? So you can't be an agenda setter with op-eds. They want on the op-ed page what's on the news page. So if something's trending and that you might not be called for an expert or whatever, but you've got something that you really want to write about and you might want to move the ball forward, that's what op-eds are, right? You want to move the ball forward, contact me and we could write an op-ed about it because it's trending in the news and that's what people want to know about, right? Okay. And then social media. Social media, you're always feeding the monster. So if you are on social and you have a commentary or you have something, post about it, like it, tweet it, retweet it, be active on social media. And then we also have our own content. That's, UT News. We have, an internal email or an email that goes out to thousands of people that we can also promote as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, questions, any questions?
So when you're looking for experts to speak to something, you mentioned you have like 24 inquiries to speak about affirmative action. How do you then know who to go to? Is there any sort of list of faculty that have volunteered or want to be contributors?
There is. So with that, we have an experts guide that definitely needs updating.
Okay.
I'll be the first to tell you that. So if it's what we've done in the past over the 10 years we've had, the comm reps. It really falls on the comm reps to update the experts guide. So when you have new faculty or faculty that do want to be part of the public conversation, tell your comm rep and they'll put you into the experts guide, because a lot of the times is that I don't know too. So I'll go to the experts guide and Google it and in there, not Google it, but enter it in there and see if it comes up. So for instance, like the affirmative action, we actually have a researcher in the College of Education that researches that type of stuff. So she has been hitting it hard the last 2 days. She was on NPR yesterday, talking about not on behalf of the university. So right on something that says it's more on the 30,000-foot view on the way that it could impact it on a national level. It's not something that, UT should do that. So that there is a fine line there on something that might impact UT. She's not speaking on behalf of UT or any of our policies. It's that this is happening at the 30,000-foot view again, and that this is what could happen. Trends, right?
Do the comms reps have access to that experts guide to update it directly?
They do. Yeah, and they work through my office to do it, so, they have access, it is a little bit wonky, so my office helps with it. As well, so it's, me and Ross on my team handles it, we actually just hired somebody who's, will be starting here in about 2.5 weeks. That, part of her portfolio will be actually managing it. So, yes. Yeah,
Do you have a written social media policy for employees or do any of the units at this point?
what do you mean?
I mean, anything from, do's and don'ts to actual like rules,
We do, we have a do's and don'ts, and at the end, his name is Nick, who can give you a more of a do's and don'ts. We don't have a policy, I wouldn't call it with that, where you can't do this and you can do this. We wouldn't want to get into that.
Yeah, like to be clear about where I'm coming from, I'm not much of a social media user, certainly not in a way that intersects that directly with these sorts of projects, but I see a lot of graduate students trying to use social media, right, to network and create reputations.
Yeah.
So I wonder what guidance, what things I can point them to say, hey, look at this. Think about how you're representing projects you're working on.
Yeah, and I think that's it, is that, think about the larger narrative that it plays into. And, be mindful of who they represent and be mindful of the atmosphere that we're in, but, if it really boils down to the social issues. Now, we have abortion, we have, they end it. It is what they're, what they want to say. So just, it just, there's no policy, but there are some do's and don'ts. We can talk afterwards about it.
I think there's questions in the chat there.
Yeah.
So, I see the chat and I don't think we have questions right now. I think those are previous.
Yeah, we're up to date.
We're good. All right. Okay, so interview tips. I'm just going to briefly touch on 3 things. If you'd like more formalized training, my office offers that. We can get into where I, throw you questions. We can get into the real nitty-gritty, but I do want to hit on 3 just kind of main topics on when you do have a phone interview, a Zoom interview, or just interview with a reporter that I want to hit on. And that mainly is own your expertise, your experience, just own it. Okay, so reporters are generalists. Okay, so when I was a news reporter, I had like a mini education in almost everything, but I didn't know everything, right? So I wasn't totally immersed in it, but I kind of knew about it. And that's how a lot of reporters are, is that they may know a little bit about what they've heard, on social media or just kind of their own well-being, but they don't know it. So they may ask you questions or they don't know, but own the experience. You are the expert. And if they say something that might be a little off, correct them. Just, you are the expert. And it's okay to say, I don't know. If they ask you something that I don't know, I can go find that information for you and I'll come back to it. But, you are the expert. So don't, I hate to say it, but don't be pushed around in it. And if you're on camera, just look at the reporter, talk in complete sentences. That would make a better soundbite. Be short in your answers. A lot of times reporters will have what's called the silence, because if I just sit there and look at you, that weird silence, we want to fill that silence. So it gets people talking. So when I was a news reporter, I'd just sit there and let 3 or 4 seconds just go there to see if the person would talk more. It's okay to just sit there and look back, right? Yeah. So chances are you're not going to be in that type of an interview environment where they would pull that tactic, but just keep that in mind, is that they do use silence as a way to keep you to get talking. So if you've said your piece, just say it and then move on. This is the important one, is you have to link what you're talking about to everyday society. Right, so you need to explain why it matters to someone who might not have any connection to your research, who might not understand your research, who may, has an education level that is, not to this. So what I like to do is, my wife is a cosmetologist, so, she is not science, science is not her thing. So how would you explain it to my cosmetologist wife, who is all about hair and nails and everything? How would you explain it to her on what your research and why it would impact her, right? So that's the important thing, and to do it in a way that is not technical or has jargon, just easily digestible, which you guys do. You guys explain it to students, people who don't know. You guys are very, very good at what you do. So just conversate and talk with them. And then finally, this is basic. Return calls and emails. It can be kind of jarring when a reporter may email you and be like, oh, I want to interview you. I don't know what to do. Contact your media rep. You can work through your media rep, but what you don't want to do is to, for lack of a better word, ruin the relationship by not returning their calls and emails. If you're busy, sorry, I can't talk to you today. I can talk to you tomorrow, or this person would be better. Don't send them to another university. This would be interesting. Note is that the New York Times called, and I sent them to a professor, and it was the New York Times, and I was all happy that they were getting it. And the person, they talked and they said, well, yeah, I figured I wasn't the total best, so I sent them to my friend at the University of Michigan. And the University of Michigan was quoted in the New York Times after I got them to interview our reporter or our faculty member. Don't do that, please. You are the expert, and that's what I'm back to. Own your experience. You are the expert, even though you might not have that little bit of expertise in that little bit of area, and that your colleague up in Michigan might. We want to promote you. This is for UT, right? So again, anyway, to go back, return calls and emails. That's just.
So you can do the interview and then send it to your colleague.
Exactly, dude, exactly.
This is not true if you're in any kind of adversarial situation, right? Just saying, like this is like assuming we're in the framework of sharing expertise about a topic that's in the news. But if it's any kind of
this does make the
why
assumption.
why have the robots run amok on UT's campus? You do not do your calls unless you're.
In that situation, if you feel the negative, you're right. There is that assumption that this is all based off proactive, positive media. However, we still would like to be part of that because it goes back to accuracy, right? And dispelling misinformation. So in that situation, if you're feeling a little uneasy, call me, call your communications rep, and let's talk about it. I can call the reporter and be like, well, what's the story? Like, what are you, to me, it's, so it's not black or white. There is a gray area.
Yeah, just because if things get all adversarial, then you just want to make sure that you're being mindful of a strategy before you talk to a person. You want to
Correct.
Pick up the phone, weigh in.
Right.
Right. Check signals.
Right, and adversarial, it's not going to be something on, with the robots on campus that's happening on campus, but for what you guys are going to be more or less the majority of what you're talking about, it's not going to be adversarial on you or the university. It's going to be more of what's happening out there in society.
Yeah, I think there's some questions that are really tricky, right? And a few years ago, was it in Dallas or Houston that there was a robber or I don't know, kidnapper or something, and somebody had killed somebody, and they ended up using a robot for actually detonating a device and killing that person, right? And they ended up calling me and asking me, should robots be used for this purpose, right? And I was completely caught off guard, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should compile these sort of question patterns, right? That they are extremely difficult. That the questions are really morally complex, and then maybe talk to you and I'll respond to those.
Right, correct, yeah, and it's going to be an individual case by case, because they're linking that off of something that happened topically, right? So, but we could talk about that to go back to our main points on what you want to convey on this. Is that yes, this happened, but this isn't.
You can pause if there's a better time in your presentation to talk about this, but I just wonder something in our universe. there been any media interest in the Twitter, Elon Musk takeover thing and all the potential changes that?
I think that's gonna be, I was just mentioning, I think that's gonna be the next hot topic. You know, I really do, is that with Twitter coming up. So I mean, that's gonna be, and what's the next thing that Elon's gonna do, right? So we don't know yet the changes, but that is.
But that's tough. I mean.
One of the, yeah, and that kind of gets into the op-ed section, right? Because you can take a lot of liberties with op-eds and saying, hey, well, if he does this, this is going to happen, right? And you can opine about that, right? So that's where op-eds kind of play into that. But I do think Twitter is a really good topic that you guys can really weigh in on moving forward, so.
I've got an engineering background. And that, what I perceive when I get asked a question is that you answer the question that's being asked. And then I went to a media training thing and they say, just keep on message, just keep on message. And then I tried it with, you know, getting interviewed by news things, and they'd ask me a question. I didn't want to answer that question because the question was going down a route I didn't want to go. So I kept on messaging. I just repeated something that I said before. And I thought, wow, they're just gonna nail me. They're just gonna like go, well, you didn't answer the question. No, they just rolled on.
Yep.
So if you get questions you don't like asked, just go back to the message that you went and just repeat the message, and then they'll just roll on and continue on.
Yeah, and that's true, and in the media interview tips that we do with expanding, that's part of that, is that there's like those bridging sentences, like, well, that's a great question, but what I really want to talk about is, you know, and then we list about 4 or 5 different ways. So if you do ever get a question that you don't want to answer, there's a way to say, hey, that's a great question, but what you should really talk about is this. You know, it's a nice way of saying, let's not talk about that. So, but yeah, you're right. All of the reporters are doing are just kind of looking for that 10 to 15 word soundbite that they can get, or, you know, they can pull print or on tape. So if you can just keep on those messages, but at the same side, you know, there's a clip that when I go to media relations conferences that they play, and it's somebody who literally repeats the same sentence 20 times, doesn't matter what they ask, they say the exact, don't do that. You know, so the pendulum can swing the other way too. So, you know, you have to, you know, again, it's not black and white, it's got to be gray, it's got to be in the middle.
So I shout out to Karen and Stacy, because I had an interview on Tuesday with a group, and the last question, the advice was get the list of questions at a time. I did, and I mapped each question and what I wanted to talk about. And the last one was like, what is, you know, where are we in the evolution of robots and what are we going to see? And I don't want to talk about that, right? I don't want to speculate in the future. So I pivoted to, well, you know what, we need to know more about the history of robotics if we're going to understand that. So then I pivoted into our kind of robotics stuff, right? And they were totally okay with it.
Yeah.
They didn't care. Like, they didn't care what I thought, you know, it was like,
Yep.
Awesome. I don't have to say something that's going to not be true about the future of robotics. Right?
They would go, no, you didn't answer the question.
I know.
Really, like, they don't. They're busy. And they're like, they're just like, they want to get this thing over with and then get that sound bite and move on.
Correct, yeah, they only want to scrape the surface. Yeah, they're not gonna do a humongous deep dive into it. Good. Oh, my favorite topic, op-eds. Why do you want to write an op-ed? For the reasons that I said before, accuracy, public service, but the main one is thought leadership. You guys are, again, the cutting edge of your field. We need to know what your thoughts are to get out there. And it's about moving forward. So it is a lot of speculative stuff, right? You need to speculate on if this is going to happen, then this may happen. It's how to move forward. And I'll get into that. You're going to hear me say this a lot. It's not how we got here with op-eds. Everybody can tell me how we got to this point. What I want to know is how we move forward. So if you see the robot dogs on campus, you know, the headline was, you know, like, oh, should we freak out? You know, that would be a great, you know, people are freaking out about robot, get ready for it, you know, but we shouldn't be freaking out. You know, why are we freaking out? Well, they look like fighters and Terminator 2. 10, 20 years ago freaked a whole generation out, right? So it's, to talk about those things, it's how to move forward. So it's a lot of, if this happens, this will happen. So how do we get your op-eds out there? We call something fancy called Texas Perspectives. So what I've done is I've gone to every single major news outlet in Texas, and I asked them if they would at least look at our op-eds, faculty written op-eds, on a non-exclusive basis. And I did this about 6-7 years ago, and they said yes. So we started this op-ed wire service, and we've grown it out from what it was. So while the heart of our op-ed wire service is Texas publications, we do send it to outside of Texas to a couple of publications in the surrounding states. And then if you have something really good, we do pitch it to national publications. So I have contacts in most of the major pubs, but I can tell you it's very, very hard to get into the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and all the other major ones that you would love to be a part of. I was just telling Matt that I was speaking to the Wall Street Journal editor, and he told me that of their unsolicited op-eds that they get sent, they accept less than 3% on a monthly basis. So if you think, they get 1,000 a month type of a thing, they're not going to accept very many. So, I mean, what
And they only accept flaming right-wing ones too.
Yeah, exactly. And then they have their own, different publications accept their own different type of op-ed. So it's very hard to get into national publication. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but it's very hard that it will. So, kind of what's the next thing? Well, Texas publications, they're hungry for content. And then how do you define a national hit, right? Is it one placement? Because I'll talk about this. If you get it in the New York Times, it's only in the New York Times, right? But we've had one op-ed that's been in 27 newspapers across the country. So is that a national hit? Or is it a national hit just in the New York Times? I mean, I guess it's down to whatever you feel. But to me, if you can get it in 27 newspapers, or you get it on the USA Today wire, which has literally, I think, like 215 newspapers across the country, to me, that's more of a national hit.
So it's the same material that's just.
Yeah, it's just republished. It's just republished. And, and we just had one about the RUP party that I didn't know about. That was in a couple of Texas papers, but then MSN and Yahoo News picked it up. So if you go on like Microsoft Edge and you click it and it pops up with all those stories, it was actually one of the op-eds in all of those things. So to me, that's a national hit. Right? This is how you define it, right? It's kind of the old way of thinking, well, it has to be in the New York Times, it has to be in the Wall Street Journal, it has to be in the Washington Post. Those are great hits. And that's a huge win for me. And it definitely makes Jay happy. But again, it's really hard to get in. So so to that point, anytime that you can have a Texas connection, a state connection, or throw some sort of stats in there for Texas, that helps it get placed in Texas publications. And you know what? We have some of the biggest markets here. The Houston Chronicle is one of the top 5 newspapers, right? Dallas Morning News, huge newspaper.
Do you sometimes offer exclusive rights to an op-ed, or do you always say?
I do. So it's a game. So if it's a national publication, it has to be exclusive. There's no, I mean, if I sell it to even the secondary ones like CNN, The Hill, NBC, I think does one too. They are exclusive. It is, you send it to them, they own it. The Texas newspapers, they are a little more lenient with that. Although the Dallas Morning News just got a new editor in there who is very much exclusive. So he wants the exclusivity. So we're doing a dance, is what right now.
So you try to pitch the exclusives, if nobody buys, then maybe you move it to the Texas.
That's one, yeah, that's one. Or if I'm getting to know kind of its flavor, but so sometimes I won't even mark up that tree. I'll send it out, and if he wants it, he can take it. If not, it's going to go to 8 or 10 other publications in Texas anyway. That will probably run it. But it's a dance, it's very, I do it very fluid based on the op-ed, based on how strong it is and based on the topic and what the different, editors may or may not.
What's the typical timing of? Something happens, you're 24, 48 hours, 72 hours a week.
I'll talk about that in a minute. But the answer is quick. Yeah, and that's called a reactive op-ed, and I'll get to that. The sooner the better, because it's first come, first served. Okay, so what makes a good topic for an op-ed? The mainstream news, this is what I was talking about. The op-ed editors want to follow the news page. So if something breaks, they want to see it on the opinion page of the next day. So it's real easy. What's breaking today? Obviously affirmative action. The Washington Redskins are getting sold. Dan Snyder is finally selling the Redskins, or not the Redskins, the Commanders. So that's trending. So if you had something where you might want to talk about social issue or something like that, that's what they want to hear about. So whatever is trending today, the op-ed page wants it on. Social issues, those really are, it affects everybody. That's it. Is it trending, but it doesn't affect. That's why you see a lot of like road stories, travel stories, because it affects everybody. It's not very sexy, but it affects everybody on how we drive or the traffic and things. So if there's politics, policies, procedures, health and law, and then obviously new ideas. If you have a new way of doing things, and if you can combine all this, if you've got a new idea that is a health policy, hey, that's gold for an op-ed, Some thought starters for you guys. Things that are trending right now that you guys could write op-eds about. Obviously, AI policy. What does it mean? Remember, it's always how you move forward with an op-ed, right? So, Fed, state, there's different state laws. Should Texas do more than the Fed? Should Texas do less than the Fed? Mis and disinformation, right? We've got elections, obviously the pandemic. What should we know? What are ways that we can curb misinformation? And I'm talking about, you have to dive deep in with op-eds. While news reporters may be slicing the surface with op-eds, you have to do more than, say, calling for more research or calling for more funding or both sides need to get along. That doesn't fly with an op-ed. You need to be very specific on what you're saying and just relate it back to society. Some other thing, racial justice, transportation and the future of work. These are all trending topics right now that you all can write about. To do that. All right, let's talk what not to do with op-eds. Don't be self-promotional or UT-centric. The op-ed is not about you or the work that happens at UT. In fact, if you send me an op-ed about how your lab is going to fix the problem, I'll take it out. And the reason is because it'll be dead on arrival to the editors. Because if they accepted op-eds like that, then every single nonprofit in this entire country would be writing op-eds about the problem and then how their nonprofit could solve the problem. So don't be self-promotional, don't talk about your work. If you have research that plays into your overall argument, I'll show you how to work that in there. But don't be UT-centric or self-promotional. Don't just analyze a situation. That's not an op-ed, okay? You need to be very specific, okay? It's not, oh, well, if this happens and this happens, we have to move the ball forward, right? We don't want to analyze it. There can be analyzing in there, but the overall point of the op-ed needs to argue something. Remember that, it has to argue a point. And then obviously, don't be too technical and avoid jargon, and don't use a bunch of acronyms, okay? Editors hate acronyms, okay? They hate it, and there's, I got a military one time, and there was JROC, DOD, there was, it was just all, it just makes it's like alphabet soup, can I buy a vowel? So it's, please, try to be, the best written op-eds are sentences that are 8 to 10 words, 8 to 12 words that are short and simple and easy digestible, which I'll get into. There's a business, we talked about it, non-exclusive versus exclusivity. Most want exclusivity, but Texas publications will do a little bit non-exclusive, okay? Big publications do not accept as is. So when you send an op-ed to me, you and I will go back and forth. I may edit it a little bit and we will land on a spot. When I send it to the Texas newspapers, they probably won't edit it. However, if I send it to the national publications, they will edit it. They will go through it. They may have some rewrites that they want you to do, development. It will go through fact checking, where all the claims that you make will be fact checked. So I guess what I'm saying is that don't think what you send or what we send out from UT will be the end product, especially if we're going to a big national publication. Don't worry about the title or the byline. We'll try to make the title a way where it's kind of catches the editor's eye, if you will, but they'll most likely change it. Most of the op-eds that I send out, the editor will tweak it a little bit just for their own liking or their own search function. Your byline, don't make it huge, right? I'm the director of this, I wrote this book, but don't make it 3 or 4 sentences. Just you're a professor or you're a research associate of this in this school. And then of course, be aware of the reaction. This would be a little bit less for this group, but if you're writing about a controversial topic on social issues, abortion, gun control, just be aware that you don't know who reads it. My advice to you is that if you get emails, don't respond to them because you don't know who's writing them. Let the op-ed speak for itself. We did have a couple gun control op-eds that came out that they were borderline on death threats that the professor got. So I mean, just be aware of the reaction. Nothing came from her, but your work is out there. So this is what I was talking about. There's 2 different types of op-eds: proactive and reactive. The first one is proactive, and those are kind of the easiest ones, is that we know that it's coming up. This would be Veterans Day, an upcoming date, the election, something that you want to write about. This is happening, we have time. So we need a lot of time. The editors need time, like a week, to get it in the pipeline, right? So if you know something that is coming up, let me know, write the op-ed, and then send it to me, but do it like 3 or 4 weeks prior to the event, because the editor needs at least a week to get it into the pipeline, right? So right now we're working on Veteran Day op-eds, right? I have 2 now that we just got done today. I'm going to be sending them out tomorrow, and that doesn't happen until a week from Friday, right? So that's the timing, is that they need time, you need planning. But the ones that they really like are the reactive ones. And these are the ones that catch fire. And these are the ones that will be placed in a national publication or will be placed in 27 publications across the country. Because this is what editors are looking for, is that the reactive op-ed. And this is the hardest to get in. These are the best, it's the hardest because it kind of is a first come, first serve, right? So these are school shootings, major shakeups. So like Twitter was bought on Friday is when it closed. So if we had something come out Friday afternoon or Monday morning might even be too late, right? It kind of sucks for you guys because you literally have to drop what you're doing and write an op-ed, right? So, but if they're short, but you really do have to get out there, and that's how you get, and that's what they want, is they want these reactive type. Just some basic writing tips. First and foremost, have a topical reference. I mean, timing is essential, right? So when there's news happening, they want to hear about it. And they want you to link to kind of what's happening and kind of to be, just how do I put it? Non-formal. So if it's better to start off the op-ed talking about maybe like the celebrity who died, or something to where everyone can that people know that identify with, right? So be informal about it and have that topical reference. You need to offer specific, recommendations. An op-ed is how you improve matters. So it's, you can't be satisfied with just, again, calling for more research or more funding. You have to answer, offer these specific recommendations and have a call to action for specific groups of people, right? So what should lawmakers do? What should the public do? What should school administrators do? What should Elon Musk do? And then make a single point, put it on top. So a lot of researchers, when they write their journal articles, they always save the best for last. This is not that type of writing. You want to put your best on top. And make a single point. If you can't tell me what you're arguing in a sentence, then you're probably trying to cover too much. Again, it's not how we got here. It's where we go from here. Okay. We all have different ideas on how we got to this point, but we need to know how we move on, what that is. Use active voice, avoid tedious rebuttals. If you read something that made your blood boil, let's say you read an op-ed in the New York Times or the Statesman that just ticked you off. Writing an op-ed against that op-ed that's not an op-ed. That's a letter to the editor. So, and that's 150 words, 200 words. Okay. So if you wanted to write an op-ed against an op-ed, you may mention it in the op-ed, like, well, so-and-so mentioned this in the New York Times, but the op-ed has to be about something totally different, not why that op-ed was wrong, but on your own point. That makes sense. And then, of course, make your ending a winner. It's called going full circle. So editors love it when you open up with something and then you close it with the exact same thing that you mentioned. So if you talk about, Twitter is going to go down the tubes because Elon Musk got it, then you bring it back to Twitter is going down the tubes because Elon Musk got it somehow in the end, right? All going full circle. All right. And this is the hardest part. You got to do it in 650 words or less. You guys, faculty members are just clearing their throats at 650 words. We're just getting started with 650. That's not very much at all, is it? But that is unfortunately just the limitations. Yes, you see op-eds longer than that. Dallas Morning News sometimes will run 1,000, 1,200 words, New York Times, all. But they all start at 650 words. One, because they're unsolicited, and number two, they grew because the editor wanted them to. So the editor, a lot of that time, I've had that where I sent it 650 words, and they're like, well, you know what, I want this and this, and I write back, well, that's going to go over workout. That's fine. I'll devote 800 words to it. 875, 900, but it always starts at 650 words.
So what you're saying is a draft of 150 word abstract maybe gets us.
Maybe, yeah,
like-
yeah. Yeah, and it can't be lower, right? They do want it. So, it's a real tiny short spot. So I would say anything less, like if you have 580 words, that might be okay. 600 is better, but anywhere between like 600 and 670 is really the juicy, where you want to hit. 650 is kind of right on the thing, because right on the bullseye. Statesman only does 625. Other new publications go up to 700. It really just depends, on the publication, but generally speaking, 650 is the good. All right, let me give you some examples. So this is how an op-ed was sent to me. And this is about the Pope. This is a couple years ago, the Pope coming to America. And this is actually a pretty good op-ed in the sense, you can see the color codes down there. What makes it topical? Well, next week. I mean, that's good. He time-stamped it, which you don't want to do in an op-ed. You want to use words like recently, because you don't know when the op-ed is going to run, right? So maybe the op-ed will run the day before he comes, and next week just throw it out. So that it saves work for the editor. Remember, overall, this is that you want to do the work for the editor. The less amount of work for the editor, the more he's going to like your op-ed. So, but it's still good. You put in some sort of thing, and then there's actually an opinion in there. Probably the most specific aspects. Visit lie elsewhere, and then he goes on. This is how we changed it, right? So in the first 3 paragraphs, it should have what the color goes. It should be what makes it topical. your opinion, and then the call to action moving forward. So you can see that in those first 3 paragraphs, what is that, maybe 100 words, you basically summed up his overall point, why you should care and what makes it topical, and then he goes on to make his point. This is how you put research into it. So we have a researcher in the College of Education who studies teacher burnout and how specifically school shootings are impacting teacher burnout. So in our latest school shooting, we came out with an op-ed and he did research. Now, notice with his research, he didn't say, I did this research in my lab. And notice he didn't say also because of word count that, you know, I did this research with so-and-so from this great university, and this is how we did. He doesn't even explain how he did the research. What he did here is he just used his research to back up his overall point, right? And he didn't lead with it. Okay? And another thing that was really good is that you got the color codes together, right? So he called out what makes it topical, what's my opinion, and then how do you move forward? Oh, and then the next paragraph, it's the research to back up your overall point. That's what editors are looking for. Okay. Throw all the color codes out. This is a tactic that we use. This is going to be more work for you guys, but if we have a Texas specific op-ed, it is good to have Texas city specific information to where we're pitching it. So this went, if you can see, each color code is city specific, and it would be a standalone second paragraph with just that sentence in there, right? So in San Antonio, we sent it just that sentence to San Antonio. For Houston, we sent it to that, in Austin, and then obviously Dallas, Fort Worth, right? This op-ed appeared in each one of those cities simply because we did that. We took the extra time. The researcher put in the extra work to do that, and we made it local to that publication, right? So if you have something where it could be Texas specific, do that. It will only increase your chances to get a place. And then finally, I just wanted to give this example is that any topic can be an op-ed if you meet the criteria. Okay, like if you have something topical, if you have an opinion, and if you have a call of action. We have one of the world-renowned researchers on Shakespeare on this campus. So it was Shakespeare's birthday. I thought, what the hell relevance does he have? So I went and asked him right op-ed. It was a great op-ed. So anything can be an op-ed about, you know, something that's topical that, you know, is interesting. All right. Any questions on op-eds before I switch to social media real quick?
I have a question about their enduring value, if any, like longitudinally, what is an op-ed I wish I had written 4 years ago, or is it always about the next one?
I mean, you know, yeah, you can, so what's your question? I mean, you can always brush off op-eds and they, but you use it to build your, you know, your profile as well, you know?
And not to question the value of it, just to determine whether there is a longitudinal value, or if it's more like, I want to get involved in this, I want to raise my profile, and then I'm going to start kind of doing a few, or is it kind of like, oh, a great op-ed from like 2 years ago is still having an impact?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, I'm not sure if I totally understand your question, but there is a value there, and it establishes you as a thought leader. And then, you know, when reporters Google you, right, because they will Google you, you know, those op-eds may pull up. So, you know, it's like, okay, so he's publicly spoke before, and this is what he has to say. You know, it isn't, you know, you're building your public. Op-eds are just kind of one little part of it, you know, to it, versus the larger scope of, you know, speaking publicly, having a social media profile, just being out there in public.
Okay, so it's more like that it's there than the content, because it's a short piece. Right?
I
Correct.
think too, I just want to chime in. I think there's value to like you raising your voice about something that shapes the conversation moving forward. And it's always there as a resource for people, but I mean, it helps the general public, you know, have access to like the way that you're thinking and your call to action. And I think it shapes some coverage moving on from that as well.
You guys don't have any SOA kind of, you don't do anything like around helping things get seen or not helping things get seen.
You like paid advertising?
Yeah, like SOA or just, like search optimization or de-optimization, like so if you have an op-ed predicting recession in
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can hire somebody to write the very thing.
Yeah.
Or the fuck things.
No, I mean, from what our, what we do with the op-eds is we go out and we promote them, we want them to be in mainstream news media, and then we post them to a site, Texas Perspective, but that's just kind of an archival site that's on YouTube.
That's not a site that has any special interest.
Right, exactly, and it's not, and we don't go promote them on social media or anything. So social media, why do you, I'll just briefly touch on social media, just like 3 slides here. And if you want more information, I'll have a slide at the end on who to contact, but just, it's a great way to build your profile, so it's kind of the 3-prong effort. If you want to build your profile and to be out there publicly is, to speak to the news media, to write op-eds, and part of that is to have a social media profile, because it is good to connect with specific audiences, your students, people in the industry, and then also, journalists. And, it depends on what platform you're on. Obviously, Twitter, there's been some recent changes with that, but Twitter traditionally has been, kind of what's new in your field, your little, thought processes, if you will. Facebook's a great way to connect and share, obviously beware of trolls on there. LinkedIn's good for professional content, and then Instagram and YouTube is obviously the visual aspect if you have great visual stuff that you want to put out. Some steps to begin. You need to know.
I think I would add maybe to this list one more, which is the laboratory websites.
Yeah.
That they are, it's good to promote them, I think, and get as much traffic. So you can use the website of the lab as a blog, and that's what they do in my lab, right?
Mhm.
Is a blog.
Mhm.
So it's not just the tabs where you connect the research, but it's a living blog, and every week something that might be big impact or something very local, like a student publishing something, and these are good places as well.
Yeah.
As a media sort of attraction.
Yep, absolutely right.
Then you use Twitter or something to promote the website.
Good points there.
Define your profile too. I mean, be current, accurately, explain who you are and what you do, create excitement about your work. Obviously have a, up-to-date headshot and title and name. And then, identify your target audience, check out profiles, who you admire, the similar academic interests, identify journalists who write about your work. But who do you want to reach? And then go ahead and start building it. Think about who you want to follow, leaders in your industry, people who you want to follow. Do not market yourself. Same thing as op-eds. Talk about your ideas. Always feed the monster, right? It's the never-ending monster. Post a lot. Like and share and retweet, and then finally engage with journalists to build your reputation, connect your work to what's happening in society. Okay, so if you have any questions, we're social, contact Nick. He's our social media manager for the university. He knows a lot more about social media than I do. And then for media relations and op-eds, well, specifically for op-eds, contact me. And then any type of communications work, contact your rep, be the best. And then me as well. I'm always happy to talk with you. Any other questions?
This may be obvious to a lot of people, but can you talk about the difference between an op-ed and a news release? In my previous job, I would often say, "Oh, Karen, we should write an op-ed about blah blah blah." And I'd say, "Well, actually, though, that's a news release."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can probably answer it just as good as I can. A news release is that announcing the results of something, right? So that's why we only do peer-reviewed research or something that's major that's happening, like we put out a news release that, dog robots are gonna be on campus. That's an announcement, right? An opinion editorial is your opinion, right? So it's your opinion that robot dogs are coming to campus, it's, and then something more of societal. So, hey, it's coming to UT campus, but Austin and Texas, get ready, we're gonna be having a ton of robot dogs, all around, or, don't kick the robot dogs, how are drunk people going to interact with robot dogs? It's not announcing something, it's more of your opinion on the thing. And in the opinion, it's not a news release, right? So you can't be talking about, oh, we did this, because that gets into self-promotion, being UT centric, right? They want to talk about the 30,000 foot view about the issue on the whole, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say also when Matt says opinion, isn't this great? It's not the opinion he's talking about, like, it's great to have robot dogs on campus. It's taking a stance on something.
Correct.
And like putting a stake in the ground, and ideally it's something that's compelling.
And that's hard for faculty members to do, because it seems like, at least the writing I get, they always leave out, well, this may happen. Well, this could, we could, op-eds aren't like that. It's, if we do this, this will happen. So you do have to put that stake in the ground and put your, that, it's not, well, it's not the wishy-washy.
And then for contrast to the media pitch, which is where you mentioned earlier, that would be like a grant award, go out as a media pitch.
Yeah, and what that is your communication rep saying, getting information from you, and maybe even a quote, from you, and then the communications rep would reach out to the a reporter that they identify and say, hey, I think I got a good story that you might want to cover. We have, researchers getting grants are just not, it happens every day, and it's not sexy, but maybe the research is impactful, and that's really what the news might want to cover. It's not.
That's what I'm trying to get to, is that from the news channel's perspective, the op-ed is an opinion that they want to share because people are going to read it. The news release and the media pitch are things that we're wanting to put out there that may get folded into stories that a journalist is working on, or
yes, the media pitch would be yes, or on it. The news release is more of something major that's happening, that research results, right? So for instance, today we sent out a news release that was in a peer-reviewed journal that published today. That's why we sent it out. That found same-sex couples in their relationships, they handle stress better than heterosexual couples. Right, so that's the finding of the paper. So that's the news release that we sent out, was
that it gets picked up by a reporter who wants to write about it.
Correct. So we sent that to 500 news reporters across the country, right? As a news release. That's not a media pitch, right? Because that's peer-reviewed research. That's a news release. Now, if it was more like incremental research, or they got the grant to study that, then that might be a pitch. Right, because really what the news reporters want is research results. That's really what they're after. They're not after the incremental research. They don't really care about grants.
So you could write an op-ed and saying like, hey, stress, the holidays are coming up, and stress is something we're thinking about a lot. Like, get some tips for handling stress from same-sex couples, and then write about it, and then at the bottom say like, oh, in fact,
research.
we did research. Our research shows this. To like,
correct,
have the whole thing built around just like, here's an intervention, not like.
But for an opinion, tips don't work, right? So you can't really write about tips. It'd be like,
Like a blog.
yeah, that would be more of like what an op-ed for that would be, dive into the reasons why. Right, so, and it would be more towards the heterosexual. So it would be an opinion that, and you'd have to stake a claim on it. Like, heterosexual couples need to do X more, and then they go into, they wouldn't even mention their research, and you'd have to talk to the researcher really minded on why they think that's the case why same sex handles stress a little bit more and they're better in the relationship than Anderson. But, you know, you would have to, it would be more of, you know, I hate to say it, but op-eds, generally speaking, are critical and negative. That's their best, that's the best one. So you need to kind of approach it through that lens of being critical and negative.
Okay.
I have a question that's like a little bit different, which is about you focus on news outlets, different scales, regional, national, right? In the media scape, it seems to be, I think there's a lot of people that a lot of the reportorial action is actually in like the business press and like very applied kinds of journals, right? That they don't tend to, I mean, I don't know, like if they have much op-ed kind of energy, because it's usually just like, here's the latest thing, and, you know, machine tool.
Yeah.
Right, but you find that there is a way to approach that kind of outlet, if you've got something that you think might really get a lot of eyeballs on it in a, not have a trade magazine.
Yeah, I mean, the comm reps have, you know, they have their own, we don't in our office, but the comm reps have each one, you know, within like engineering, right? So they have a bunch of engineering industry folks that they know of that we might not know of. So that's where the comm reps will come in and help. And that because they can, they can help pitch, they can do their own stuff. For op-eds, yes, a lot of those publications don't have it, some do, you know, but it's. We're over, aren't we?
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
For lending your time.
Thank you.